Welcome to the AV Experience for another episode. We're going to talk about gaming today and how Jonathan games in his theater and I don't, which is what I put in the description. But Jonathan, how have you been? I've had a good week. I'm feeling much better after coming down with whatever I did after ISE. I notice again that your subwoofers are not on the floor in the front of your theater, which I'm going to continue to narrate as we can move on. I think they're still right behind you. Do they have carpet on them?
I don't have carpet yet.
Oh.
First off, I went and talked to Home Depot and they're like, no, we don't do that. We don't know anyone who does either. So I'm going to have to go to a custom carpet place.
You mean Home Depot didn't know how to carpet subwoofer boxes?
They wouldn't even entertain the idea.
Well, I don't blame them. Hey, I'm just imagining you going into home theater and be like, hey, have you guys ever custom carpeted home theater subwoofers?
I mean, how much different could it be than stair steps? That's what I was thinking. Like, if they do stairs, why couldn't they do those boxes? Doesn't seem that different.
It's probably not different, and they probably could. They just don't want the liability, because what if they screw it up?
Well, he just said you can only buy it for the floor. We would come in and measure the floor, and if he has to do something like this, we're not going to do it. That's that. He was like, he was just saying we're not going to do it. You have to find a upholstery or a custom carpet place. So the search will continue. I haven't even called a second shop. It was just the
Facebook Marketplace or someplace and ask people, post on Facebook for people that have had good experiences with people doing carpet. I imagine just some guy doing carpet would do it for you.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's not much different than stairs.
Right. The guy was kind of acting like I could probably do it myself if I wanted to. I haven't done that before, but I mean, I probably could. He said staple the living daylights out of it on the edge and just pull it tight. And he said,
honestly, I think carpet's one of those things that I would not want to do. He's probably saying that as a guy that's done carpet for 50 years. Like, oh yeah, that's not a problem. And here's Jonathan, and you look at it and the edges are just not carpet anymore. It's just silver with staples. And that's all it is.
Just ragged. There's like strings hanging out everywhere and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that'll be so easy. It's like somebody telling you that wallpaper's easy. Yeah, that's sure. You go do that.
Well, I think his idea was that you would just buy pieces big enough to fit the whole thing and not have to seam it anywhere and stuff. So he was thinking that might be easier in that sense.
Well, you could also be a total easy mode guy and just cut the pieces to fit for every side.
The problem is, how do you, and I don't know anything about it, this probably tells me I shouldn't do it, but how do you keep the seams from unraveling and the edges from fraying, basically? Because it's just I know what the bottom of a carpet looks like. As soon as you cut that edge is loose.
Well, probably what you'd do if you did it that way, instead of getting a thinner carpet that you would go around the whole box, would be to put some type of corner on it, like L channel or corner piece that would cover it, like a threshold that you would do in a doorway to bring two pieces together so that the seam happens underneath that. I don't know what the technical term for this is. You can tell that I'm really into carpet. But
that sounds pretty ugly to me, I think, doesn't it?
Yes.
It framed basically like a external frame on it.
That seems bad. Don't do that. I mean, what you could do is you could just paint the whole thing and just carpet the top.
Yeah.
You could do that. Miles says staples and glue. Miles, you're probably a guy that's done carpet for decades. Yeah.
The little 12-inch squares that they have that are coming out more of a commercial carpet. I wonder if you could get away with that, because then you just trim it to size. It has a different backing on it than normal carpet, I think.
I don't know. As you can tell, I am not the guy.
Yeah, no, I haven't done the research I need to even talk intelligent about it right now.
I'm not that guy. But you did do that pole, and you moved that pole. I still remember that whole thing.
Oh yeah.
That was.
But I had some years and experience in doing that. I did basement waterproofing for a year and a half. So I
thought you were going to tell me that you did carpet for a couple of years.
I never did any carpet. Not well.
Not well.
Not well.
No, it just seems like something I would totally screw up. See, guys, you didn't think you'd join today and learn about carpet. Or
they haven't learned anything.
We don't know anything about carpet.
Now, I did make subwoofers in the past that I used a cowhide to cover with, and that was kind of cool, like a leather cowhide. I'm not sure I'm going to do that again, but it's a possibility. You can buy a whole cow, the hide at what's that place? IKEA's has them. and they have assortment, and they're just like a giant piece of leather that's shaped like a cow. It has the legs and everything, and you just cut it to size.
You
So
could
that's
do
kinda
that.
cool.
Josh Damon says car audio guy. Find a car audio guy that makes subwoofer boxes. He'll be able to do it. You should ask Doug, not to do it, but he may know somebody that could do it.
That's a good idea.
I would ask Doug. Heck, one of his firefighter buddies probably does it. Probably decades of experience with carpet.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Doug might do. I don't know. But that sounds. So you need underneath the chairs and stuff and the subwoofers all.
Yeah,
carpet?
I'd like to do the riser and the subwoofers themselves. So get it all done.
MW, since I brought up the poll, MW is asking, why does Jonathan have
It's
a pole?
not one of those kind of poles.
Don't get too excited, MW. It's not one of those poles. It could be used for one of those poles.
If you came to M-Wave, you'd know, man. You'd know.
So basements here in the United States, there's a beam that runs across Jonathan's ceiling, and there's a pole. Now, some houses you can see the poles, and some houses you can't. Sometimes they frame them with different things. Sometimes they hide them in walls. It just depends. Virtually every house has them. It's just some you can see and some you can't.
The way they do it, to the knowledge that I gleaned, is unless you have it custom built with like larger steel beams, they can do a 14-foot span. And so I moved mine from 14 foot to like 15 and a half foot, and the engineer said that was fine. You can get around it if you pay for or increase your span size. So most basements, unless you are like purposely doing it, they'll have a max length of 14 foot.
I think ours is over that, but ours are both in walls.
They'll hide them in walls a lot of times.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. Jonathan's just, for whatever reason, isn't. And you do see them. I mean, they're all over the place in the Midwest. It's not like Jonathan's pole in it. It's not like Jonathan's pole is different. You can't go thinking of that Jonathan's pole looks funny. Okay.
Well, so this room was not a home theater at first, right? Just a general purpose home theater room. A general purpose room. I turned into a home theater room. This pole was wrapped in wood, like a square,
it was
like a square piece of wood, and not even that long ago, like 2 years ago. But when the wood is kind of, yeah. But I mean, before I had these seats and so forth, when I had the brown Brookline chairs,
yeah,
the pole was there, and it was just a square, like it was wrapped in square wood, finished trim.
But that wood is rewrap it.
I didn't want to, because that wood is like kind of big and obnoxious and a little bit more of a distraction than a black pole is. It may not look as finished with a black pole, but it's less visually distracting when you're watching a movie from the back row, for instance.
Yeah.
I thought about wrapping it in velvet, and I might still do that because that would make it disappear a little bit more, but it doesn't catch the eye right now. And
I don't think I would. I think wrapping it in velvet actually may make it more noticeable to the eye. Because right now, you think about it, just looks like a pole, and it's your brain immediately just is like pole, and then just gets rid of it. You wrap it in velvet, you're gonna be like, "That's a pole. Why is there velvet on it?" And you're gonna notice it. And we're gonna start talking about why Jonathan's pole is wrapped in different things, and it's just
covered in dog hair.
I need to stop.
That would be the thing.
I need to stop. Okay, we got this is an interesting question. Then we can jump in. We got to talk about the movie, and then we got to talk about our topic, and then we can answer people's questions. But Drew Arendondo, that's a cool last name. It's way cooler than my last name. Asks, and thank you for the $9.99 USD super chat.
Yeah, that's
always appreciated, never required. But this is an interesting question because I saw the Heimdall at ISE, and he says deciding between the Barco Heimdall, which is a 6,000 lumen RGB laser, it's a one chip 4K resolution, and the Christie M4K15, which is 14,000 lumens RGB laser, 3-chip DLP, but it's a pixel shifter. Seymour 150-inch screen, any reliability issues with the brands? I'll talk about reliability. They're not that I'm aware of. Both of them are commercial big boys in commercial cinema. Both projectors are great, but they are significantly different. Obviously, you can tell by the specs that the Christie is going to have over double the light output that the Barco will. But the Christie is a lot larger. Well, not a lot larger. It's bigger, and it is louder. So when I saw the Heimdall at ISE, and the first time I saw it was at CEDIA, but it was in a projection room, so you didn't really get to hear it. But the Heimdall at ISE was in the room, like how most of us use projectors. They're in the room with us. A lot of times they're not in projection booths. The Heimdall is so quiet, you couldn't hear it in the theater. You could put your ear right next to it and you could not hear it at full laser. So it does 29 dB full laser, 6,000 lumens, 29 dB. I think the Christie is going to have significantly better native contrast. You're going from a single chip to a 3-chip DLP. So significantly better contrast. I want to say the Heimdall is going to be neighborhood, and this is native, not dynamic, is going to be somewhere between 15 and 2,000 to 1. The Christie is going to be 5 to 6,000 to 1. It's a pixel shifter, but I've seen them, this Christie specifically, and you're not going to notice. I mean, Jonathan uses a pixel shifter. I've seen the Epson numerous times. I like the Epson. I sell a lot of Epsons. They're all pixel shifters. You're not going to notice.
Not from your seating distance.
Heck, no. Even going up and pixel peeping, Christie's pixel shifting is so good. You're not going to notice.
What's the price on those ballpark? Like, are they in the same realm? Pardon me.
Kind of. I think the Heimdall, I mean, we're getting into big boy territory. The Heimdall's like 70. And I don't know if that's with a lens. The M4K, I want to say MSRP is 54 without the lens. So you're in like 60-ish MSRP range. The Heimdall is going to be more expensive than the M4K.
Does the Heimdall have processing, or why would you choose the Heimdall over the Christie if the Christie is better and cheaper?
Noise. I've had this conversation with one of my buddies while we were at ISE, and he was like, I told him, I think the Christie's got more bang for the buck, but he's like, it's in the room with me. Noise is a huge concern. So in order to get that, he's saying Heimdall. He's willing to sacrifice the light output to get the noise reduction. So I don't know.
Are we going to talk about that he might not even need one of those monsters for a 150-inch screen? What do you think about like a JVC NZ900 or something? I'm
not the right one to ask for that because I'm on a 165 and I have a 35,000 lumen projector, so it's not really a good person to ask. To me, here's my take on this: is that I've gotten spoiled now with watching content at 300 nits. Right? I look at the content, and sure, the Griffin, and I'm gonna say the Heimdall and the M4K15. When you get into black scenes, like dark scenes, it's not fantastic, right? It's gray. You can tell that it's not something like a JVC. You lose that huge native contrast number. But man, when you get even a mild, mid, or high APL scene, it is otherworldly. Like we watched the movie we watched last week was Wild Robot. It was phenomenal, like just amazing. You look at it, and I've seen a lot of projectors, and like I don't regret this at all. This is unbelievable when you start watching with that amount of ANSI contrast and that brightness, and there's no going back. So once you get to that, I'm well willing to give up the low APL scenes for that brightness.
Well, and that brings up a kind of a side topic here, and we don't have to abandon this completely, but like in the movie this week, and we'll stop here. We can go to the movie after we're done with the question. But in the movie this week, there's a lot of dark content.
There was a lot of dark.
But it was mastered very well to where I never, ever noticed like, hey, this is gray. And normally on a movie that's got that much dark, like that would be an issue. Because I watch it in SDR now. I didn't watch in HDR, so that might play into it. But I thought it was particularly mastered well in the sense that it didn't reveal the shortcomings of
the only reason I noticed is because you've got I have some small black bars on the top and bottom of my screen. I could notice there, but in the content, it was mastered, as you said, very, very well. And I wasn't pulled out at all in any way, shape, or form. So
And then to contrast that, I watched Oppenheimer this week, and Oppenheimer is not mastered well in dark scenes. And my Epson floor, the black floor was not great on the Oppenheimer movie. So like two very different ways of presenting, one phenomenal and one like kind of like making me want a little bit higher contrast, native contrast projector.
Mm-hmm.
Both very dark scenes. Like
They
if you
are.
didn't, yeah, very interesting how that all works out like that.
Yeah. Did you have the same problem on Game of Thrones or any of the
So
really
when I
dark?
watched through Game of Thrones, I think I was using the JVC at the time. I don't think I had the Epson at
Yeah,
that
then you're
point.
not going to have that problem. You're
Game
not
of
gonna have
Thrones
that
has
problem.
some very, very dark content. You're probably better off watching that in SDR, frankly, unless
Yeah.
you're, in my case, without Mad VR. In your case, with Mad VR, you might not.
Mad VR makes a huge difference. It
Sure.
didn't matter. But yeah, if I put either of these projectors next to a JVC, there's a huge difference. But the JVC is not going to get to, on a 150-inch screen, 300 nits. It's just not. It's not going to happen. And in my opinion, once you get that point and you see that, there is no unseeing it. Even the Wisdom main Barco room at ISE, they were doing 300 nits. We were doing all the content at 300 nits outside of the DCI demo that we were doing. And that's the way it's going. I mean, you've got the Dolby Vision theaters are moving to 300 nits. You've got the HDR by Barco with light steering that's allowing things to get higher. It's just that's the direction that everybody's moving to. And with HDR, I think it's well needed. I mean, I'm still going back to when we were doing the demos at when we showcased the Mad VR Experience Center for the first time and Godzilla came on. And it is, once you see that with how bright HDR can be and the heat ray that comes out and it blinds you, it's a totally different experience. Pacific Rim with the HDR. I mean, it's just the black floor just stops mattering when you get into that. I do not think about that at all. At all. And I am just mesmerized as this stuff comes in. It's not too bright. Heck, we've done demos at 800 nits and everyone's, it's going to be too bright. And they're just, nope, not too bright. 800 nits on SDR. And yeah, it's stupid bright. And after a while, it would get pretty bad. But it's like you're there watching The Art of Flight. It is like you are on the mountain with them. It is a totally different experience. You may need sunglasses. I should pass those out when we're doing that demo. Hey, here you go. You're going to need these. But totally different experience. So, Drew, I would go for the brightness, but my suggestion is send me an email at ryan@ascendav.net because this is a tough question. Like, I can understand why you're struggling with this because you're getting into a realm that the industry is just now starting to wrestle with, right? The recommended practice now for RP23 level 4 is now 300 nits, but this is all brand new. So historically, it's always been, you want HDR to be 100 nits because that's what cinema's done and that's what commercials done. And I understand why people have a tough time with this, but I think once you experience things at that brightness level, there's no going back ever, in my opinion. Now, if you get something like Christie Eclipse and have the best of both, well, then that's something else entirely. But I don't miss the 1,000,000-to-1 native contrast. I'm happy with my 6,000-to-1. And there's stuff coming from Christie that I will tell you about, but I can't tell you about here. So if you want to shoot me a message, we can have a phone call and we can chat about some stuff. But great question. Sorry for getting off on a tangent. There was another. I'll actually say one more thing about this because we didn't bring this up. He mentions the Seymour screen. And I think this is why brightness is also really important, Jonathan, is because when you start getting into these bigger screens, when you get into lasers and stuff, having a negative gain screen can help with sparkle and rainbow, mainly sparkle. But you're getting into a 0.7 or less gain screen, you need more of that brightness. Otherwise, it's just going to get sucked out and your picture is going to get even dimmer. Personal opinion, I guess. What were we going to talk about before we went into that? Anything?
No, I've been starring some comments to come back to, but we can go into the movie topic if you want.
Let's talk about the movie. It was not what I expected. I didn't really expect anything.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know what it was. I went in blind.
Didn't know either. I had watched a movie previously with him. What is it? Uncle? I don't remember what the full title
Cavell?
is.
Henry
Yeah.
Cavell. Yep.
And it was good. Had kind of that same feeling of just being different, which I really appreciate because there's so many cookie cutter movies now and everything kind of has the same vibe. And both of those movies were just different. Their whole pacing. I really appreciated how there's going to be spoilers, guys. So if you don't want to hear anything, now's your chance. I really appreciated how in the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, these guys were just badasses, right? There wasn't any, I'm just going to run. They were just schmammering everybody. The guy with the bow and arrow, like, made it his mission to kill not, and that's what he did. They were like superheroes among mortal men. And it was a refreshing take that they didn't say, oh, these guys are going to have problems with any of it. No, they didn't have problems. They just manhandled the Nazis. And as they overcame things, I rather enjoyed that.
And somehow they managed to make it where it was not utterly unbelievable. Like the movie Commando with Schwarzenegger, where he's fighting a whole army and kills them. And he's throwing saw blade. They didn't resort to that like level of kind of silliness.
When they said that the guy, he got shot with an arrow and the guy's like, where's the arrow? And he said, it went through him. And then you realize the guy that shot the arrow, and you're like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense because the guy's arms are like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Alan Ritchson, I think.
He was great.
He has his almost borderline as much like charisma as Henry Cavell, which is like sort of remarkable, right? Because that guy is loaded with it. They were fantastic together.
The whole cast was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It was different. It kind of felt like Kingsman, where it was kind of an anti-hero. These guys are not necessarily the greatest people, but they're doing what they're doing just to do it. You find out because people say they can't or what have you, but I rather enjoyed it. And then you get to the end, and that's based on, not that how it happened is true, but the whole thing is based on a real operation that took place, and the people are real. Like, now, how much of it was real, I don't know. I don't think the guy was actually impaling people with arrows, like 3 people in a line to a whatever. He did. Cool, but it was great. I enjoyed it.
I usually have trouble with those kind of movies where there's just like no one's getting hurt and they're killing so many people. Like, usually I have a problem with it. But my BS meter only went off like one time, and that was when they were having a gunfight on the ship.
Yeah,
and there were just bullets flying everywhere, and there was a little bit of that sense of like these guys have plot armor where they can't get hurt because there's so many people shooting at them. But other than that, even when that big guy was Alan Ritchson's character was killing like 5 guys at a time, they made it so it was like believable. Like, you're like, that guy could probably do that.
Well, he's huge. And then it just felt, maybe it was because they were Nazis and stuff, but then he's going through everything, and then he turns and he pulls the axe off the wall, and you're like, it's gonna get real.
Like, uh-oh.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
My wife got up. This is what I was gonna say before we went live, because I wanted to provide a how she actually felt about the movie. She got up to go to the bathroom, and she turns around and goes, "Don't pause it."
Oh, she didn't like it, huh?
She did not like it.
It was a little gory, although
no, that doesn't bother her. It just wasn't her thing. She's been into a lot of the like crime dramas and romance drama series and stuff on Netflix lately, so it just wasn't her thing.
Megan, I didn't even ask Megan to watch it with me. I figured
it wasn't going to be a Megan movie.
Warned me off on that.
No,
when he was cutting out the Nazi's heart, and he's like, they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I need a bucket of these before we."
Well, I mean, they didn't show it though.
Oh, they did. It was off camera. I mean,
while Applegate's nipples were bleeding. But I thought they made that funny because one of them just looked at it and goes, "Why are your nipples bleeding?"
And he's like, it's kind of like little funny stuff along the way too. He's like, "The battery's still on. Can you turn it off?" Like, he's supposed to be getting shot the whole time. He's like, whatever.
They didn't make nothing in that movie was made too much of a big deal. It was just, that's what it was. And I liked how everything got wrapped up with the woman and the Nazi commander.
Yeah.
And you felt like she was always ahead of him or whatever. And then you're like, crap, she's going to get taken. And then she was actually ahead of him. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I rather enjoyed it.
Yeah, the two characters there, the man that was kind of running the island was a great character, and the gal was a great character.
Do you think there was any demo material in there?
I watched it on 5.1. Did you watch it on Atmos?
Yeah.
I was watching it on Plex.
I liked her singing. That was cool. I liked that element. The first assault on the military base maybe could have some demo material in there.
I don't think anything in there stuck out to me. Like, it was
No.
well done. It just maybe wasn't something you'd necessarily show to your guests or whatever.
I think the sound design was good.
Yeah, I had no problems with it. It sounded good. But like, contrast that with pretty much just after that, like the next day I watched Oppenheimer, and I'd never seen that one before either. That has some demo worthy tracks in there. Everything from like maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes of it even are just like really good. There's all those little like effects of they're kind of showing like black holes and showing those kind of things.
Yeah, that's cool.
And just really like surround sound whirling around and bass throbbing. The transducers were doing stuff you couldn't even hear. Like, my seats were wobbling. It was such a low tone. Like, there's some really cool stuff at Oppenheimer. I didn't get any of that in the what is it? The Ungentlemanly Warfare, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. But I thought it was an excellent movie. Like, A- probably territory for me.
It was good. I enjoyed it. MW says many Guy Ritchie movies are like that, and they are. Yeah, I really enjoy Guy Ritchie. What was one of the movies that he did? It came out not too long ago where I do not know actors, but it's a military guy. They have this translator, and then the translator he gets captured, and the translator comes back and rescues him or something, and then they have to go back and rescue the train. It was there's some demo material in there. The music, to me, in a lot of cases, sells a movie. Like, it's what takes the movie to the next level for me, and that was one of them. And this movie, the sound is Covenant. Yes, this movie did a really, really good job with that as well. It wasn't as much, but music plays a big part of Guy Ritchie's storytelling, I think. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Anthony. Yes, that was the other movie that I watched last week. And then the other movie I watched was Gladiator 2. Have you seen that?
No, I've heard bad things about that, actually, and I love the original one, so that's disappointing. Did you like it or not like it?
I won't say anything.
Is it worth the watch? The Rotten Tomato scores are not good.
I mean, I think it's worth watching. Yeah.
And even the audience scores, because I don't really care what the Rotten Tomato critics say. I don't usually agree with them, but the audience scores, unless they've changed, I haven't looked in a long time. Let me look it up real quick. Rotten Tomatoes score says, it's not terrible. That's actually good. It's 82% for audience.
I'm not going to say anything more. You should watch it.
I probably will. I mean, I loved the original. It's a great one.
You should watch it. I really, really like the first one. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best movies ever, in my opinion.
I agree.
This movie is not one of the best movies ever, but you should watch it. So
did you ever watch Oppenheimer? I'm going to stick to that one too.
Yeah, I've watched it.
It's one of those movies that you know exactly who is the director by the course of the movie. You know it's a Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Because the music, while great, the score, while great, is cranked to 11 the entire time, overwhelming the dialogue. Like everything's just like, there's silence when you don't expect there to be silence, like the explosion, for instance. And there's extremely loud, intense drum beating, like rhythmic music at certain points. It's like his telltale signs are all there. Like, I didn't even really realize it was a Nolan movie until I watched it, and I was like, "That's Nolan." There's no question.
There's no question. I enjoyed it. It was not what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't think the nuclear explosion was all that great. I mean, it was just nothing but distortion.
At the beginning,
the beginning is
was probably
fantastic.
better than the end.
Oh yeah,
the demo worthy stuff.
that's fantastic. I just don't think it's a great demo because it's just all distortion. It's all it is. I mean, there's nothing dynamic about it. It's just, hey, it's like the day after tomorrow when the like first credits are coming in, the note that wasn't supposed to be there that was blowing people's subwoofers. It's like that, except not as bad. Anyway, anything else about that topic? Okay. Gaming. I put in the description because this is true. You game in your home theater. I don't. That doesn't mean that I think it's bad. It's just I don't. My kids are now. They're doing the Switch. But I've always done on my flight sim rig that's behind me. That's where I've always, not always, but that's where I've done it the last several years. So when did you get started in home theater gaming? Like, when did that happen?
2020 with the projector. 2001, 2002, in that era is when I got my first projector. It was one of those giant sharp LCD projectors. It's probably like this big. It wasn't the CRT style. It's true LCD, but it's humongous, like way bigger than the modern ones. And I still so fondly remember like playing like Need for Speed Underground with my friends on that projector. And it was probably only 800 by 600 resolution. Like it wasn't some sort of monster resolution, but we had so much fun. So much fun when you're playing. Like my buddies and I were playing Xbox and stuff, you know, together, like 4-player co-op or 2-player racing or whatever else with that projector. It was fantastic. PC gaming, all that stuff. Loved it. I mean, some of those memories are probably, they're very much nostalgia based. Probably they probably wouldn't hold up well today as far as experience, but at the time it was amazing, and everybody that came over was amazed and just like blown away and loved it. You know, at that point I had two 15-inch 1,000-watt subwoofers from Infinity, the Infinity HPS 1000s, and I had a like nice din receiver, and I had a Wharfdale surround system, like full Wharfdale towers everywhere, and like it was a great experience, like a very fun experience. That's college. The college time for me.
Yeah. I mean, I did at my parents' house, late 90s. So I did do that.
Your parents had a projector in the 90s?
Not a projector. It was a big rear projection TV. And it was a Bose system. But I mean, it was fun. I mean, I'm young. I didn't know any better. And I mean, that stuff at that time, I don't think it was that bad. It was the Bose Cubes though, but it still was fun. It was, you enjoyed it. So that was first, and then went to college and did home theater in a box. So I did do that. It was a Sony home theater box, Xbox 360 and all that. Number of years with that. And then I didn't for a while. I did on a 2.1 setup. And then it's just been, I guess when I lived in Gardner, where I lived when we first met.
Yes.
I did game on a 5.1 or 5.2.2 setup for a time on PS4. But I haven't since. And then my son just plays the PC, and then now it's just headphones.
It can be really, really, really remarkable. Like I to be quite frank, I most of the time game on my OLED for reasons we've talked about before. Like there's very much draw to OLED. But when you go and you game in the home theater and you got that giant screen, you got the subs all playing, you got the full surround system instead of just headphones, it's a very different experience.
It is.
And to the positive in a lot of ways, especially if you're doing any kind of multiplayer gaming. Like with my kids, we'll play games together in here and it's fantastic. Or when we have company over, we'll play games in here and it's fantastic. Probably some of my favorite projector memory games are games of Kung Fu Chaos. Did you ever play that one on the Xbox? It's such a fun mayhem, like karate fighting game. Really a fun one. We played, of course, like Gears of War all the time and had Super Mario Kart and all those kinds of games that we'd pass through and have a lot of fun with. But like the 4-player games, or even now the 8-player games, because we play 8-player games down here sometimes. Killer Queen Black, for instance, Pummel Party, stuff like that. We'll play down here with 8 players and 8 controllers. That's a lot of fun. You can't do that around a monitor here.
No,
like, that's not going to work. Having 8 people running around.
We've been doing Mario Party, Mario Wonder, Mario Kart, a lot of the Switch stuff, which is great for it. My daughter, who's 6, loves it because the characters are as big as her, and she's getting to do that, and she really enjoys it when we turn that on. Fun. Yeah, she has a lot of fun. What is because I saw this question come up earlier. What is your favorite game ever? While we're on this topic.
Oh, that's really a hard one.
It's a hard one.
It's gonna probably either be, I'm an action RPG fan. That's the one I just can get hooked on and play forever and ever. Diablo 2 I spent a lot of time with. Titan Quest I spent a lot of time with. Path of Exile I spent a lot of time with. Now I'm spending a lot of time with Path of Exile 2. They're games where I can just like disappear for a few months and really enjoy myself. Like the carrot is there for me on those games.
My wife and I did a lot of Diablo 3 for a long time. It wasn't as good as Diablo 2, but we enjoyed the multiplayer together. Favorite game though.
How long have you been gaming? Like, when did you start gaming?
Oh, since I was a kid.
Like, you can't remember not gaming.
Nintendo. I mean, favorite.
See, I'm a little older than you. Atari for me. Like, and then even before that, I had the original Pong console that I got for a birthday present, where it was like one game, and you had a little paddle controller for each player, and it was literally black and white Pong. Like, that was the console. Yeah. So that was my start.
My favorite game though, the original BioShock.
That's your favorite. That's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a good one. It's so scary, man. I played that on the projector.
Oh, that was one so where I was like good,
cowering because it was so scary.
I still remember getting to the end, and what does she say? Where you're the protagonist, like you are the bad guy, and it's having that moment of, oh my gosh, this whole time having this realization, because I didn't realize it till the very end.
Yeah, it did have a twist ending,
and it was just. The whole story, everything was so well done, and that's
a good
favorite. What about couch co-op?
Yes, of course.
I'm saying, what is your favorite game to play with other people?
So how many people? Let's probably delineate that, because I had an awful lot of fun playing Gears of War through, and it's just 2-player co-op on that one. At least the original ones were.
I'd have to agree. Gears of War.
That's such a good game series. And Halo for that matter too. I really loved Halo playing co-op.
Oh man. I still enjoy Halo and Gears of War co-op. Very much so. The tough thing about now is that a lot of them, for the shooters and stuff, you don't have split screen anymore. They've moved away from that in a lot of capacity.
Halo still has it.
Well, Halo's kind of the outlier.
Yeah.
I guess those two are still the outlier. I'm saying new releases that are coming out, and you don't get a lot of that anymore. You get more of, you can do co-op, but you've got to log in on your own console and do your own thing. Gears, man, I still remember when Gears came out for the first time and how amazing that whole experience was with the chainsaw machine gun. It was visceral. The whole, oh man.
I spent so much time on Xbox Live playing that one. That's one of my all-time favorite games too.
So good. Halo.
And Fusion Frenzy, did you ever play that one on Xbox?
No.
We had so many parties with that one, having a lot of fun. It's like a little challenges. Collect orbs, bank them or gamble them. Yeah, it's like, that's a great game too. I wish they'd make more party games like that. That seems to be a kind of a dying genre. I mean, the couch co-op stuff to your point, but where is that kind of stuff anymore?
On the Switch.
Well, it shouldn't go away for us older players. I still love that kind of game.
Switch isn't just for young kids.
They market it that way.
They do, but there's even the Mario games. They're all so well done. I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but playing Zelda or any of those games on the Switch, the new ones, they're so well done. I just enjoy watching like my wife or my 6-year-old play them. Even the games my daughter really loves, like Yoshi's Island, the music, the animation, how everything ties together. It's just so well designed that it's hard not to lose yourself in stuff like that. And just watching her, not only watch the gameplay, but watching her have fun is, sure, I wouldn't necessarily enjoy playing it myself, but watching her have fun with them is now a new fun thing for me. So she's really been enjoying that. All my son does is play Fortnite. So, what's your favorite modern game is going to be Path of Exile 2?
Well, currently, yes,
Mine's still Helldivers,
but probably in those same few I mentioned, as far as
Yeah.
just like time in, that can really get the hook on me.
Anything new coming console wise,
I tried
technology
that new
wise?
Indiana Jones game. Have you tried that one yet? Or
No, I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
it's like the Circle of something or other. It's okay. It runs kind of bad on my 3080 actually. It needs more than 10 gigabytes of VRAM. So
Is that what we've gotten to now?
yeah, I mean, I actually even watched a review that said a 16 gigabyte VRAM card was struggling with it because it uses a lot of the RTX and the newest DLSS type settings. And on PC, it kind of cripples a PC. Somehow, remarkably, it works fine on my Xbox Series X. Now, of course, the resolution seems a little lower and whatnot, but it still looks really good. So I was thinking, like, I played a little bit on that the other night instead of here. I was thinking, like, I'm just going to play it over here because it doesn't stutter through like it does on my PC, which I have a pretty monster PC, but the card's a few generations old now at 3080.
Man, talk about the 5000 launch and what a fiasco that's been.
I got a card. It's not really the one I was after, but I've been playing like I'm slave to the dang beepers, that go off with the now in stock notifications. And I have a Discord channel called Nerd Speak and stuff where I'm trying to catch those things. Just like the 3080 launch, I spent so much time trying to get one. I got a 5070 Ti, which I wanted a 5080 or 5090 even maybe, but I can't land one. So I'll do a 5070 Ti in the meantime. It's coming on Thursday. I'm kind of excited about that.
Do you think it'll be any better?
I do. I've watched reviews. At least for the newest generation games with all those features, like the Indiana Jones thing I'm just talking about, it's really supposed to make a pretty dramatic impact. The frame generation times 4. I mean, we're probably losing our audience at this point, but in brief, it makes 3 fake frames for every single real frame.
I just don't appreciate how they marketed that, though.
Yes, you're right, but the point being that people said that in the 40 series, I've watched some reviews online. People said in the 40 series it wasn't very good. Like the frame generation was kind of laggy and weird, and people turned it off. The same people who said they turned it off, I was watching some reviews and they're like, whatever they did, they fixed it because now it feels nice. And so you're getting like 4 times the frame rate. As long as your base frame rate is not terrible, like they say, get it as close to 60 as you can for the base. And then if you quadruple it, it feels like you're really getting a couple hundred frames a second. So I'm looking forward to that because my 3080 is a little long in the tooth at this point. We'll see.
I haven't had any motivation. I mean, I'm on a 4090. I haven't
That's
had
a great card, and I don't think there's very much benefit for you.
It is a really good card. My thing would be, if they ever become more available, is more of, do I sell it and upgrade to not just have this eventual brick that I'm not going to be able to really do anything with after a period of time? Because unfortunately, with how technology moves, if you don't unload it at some point, yes, it will cost me money, but
have you looked at the marketplace for 4090s right now?
It's insane.
They're $3,000.
Because I think it's because they're all getting sold to China.
Well, it's because the 4090s stopped. All the 40 series cards stopped being made a few months ago, like last quarter, like in November, October type frame. They stopped making them, so the shelves got completely cleared out. Like if you go to Micro Center, there's nothing. Then the 50 series came out, and it's been like slow, like they haven't had that many models, so the shelves are still empty, and people can't get a card. And if you want a Halo card, the 4090s are $3,000. And the 5090s are right there too. Like they're $2,500 to they're $2,500 at the store, not even getting ripped off at Marketplace because of the tariff price. And yeah, they've raised it all up.
Yeah, I've got a 4090 and it's been really good. Like that card's been bulletproof. I've had 0 issues. Granted, I do 2 things. I do combat flight sim with DCS and I play Helldivers, and that's all I do. And I don't have any problems with that. I mean, I'm buried at 120p on the OLED, so I just VSync it at 120 and I'm done.
If I had a 4090, I wouldn't upgrade because this card is the same technology as the old card. They've introduced some new software features and some new AI features, like with the 4 frames generation and so forth, and there's more AI cores. But
Mhm.
benchmarks between the 4090 and the 5090 is not.
Yeah, like
It's
I
not
said,
that
it's more about just going up technologically to
keep your paperweight
yeah, that's
supply
really all
down.
it is.
Do
It's
you have an
not
old card right now that you could swap in temporarily and sell that
yeah,
4090 while the market's crazy?
well, yeah, I could do
Because if
that.
you can get, I mean, truly, like, just frankly, if you can get $3,000 for it right now, and in 2 months it's worth 1,500 again, why would you not? Just put an old card in
That
there.
is a good point. I should do that.
I mean, just $1,500. Like, why not? I mean, I don't understand why people pay that, but it's all over the place.
I wonder if you could do that on Reddit.
It's certainly on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. I don't know about Reddit.
Yeah, my thing with eBay is you're gonna just lose 20% immediately because of the fees. Reddit, you don't, but then the prices are probably a little bit lower. Yeah, I could definitely swap something in. I probably should do that. All right.
4090s they're never going to be higher than they are right now. Like, this is pinnacle time to sell if you
Yeah.
want to do that.
Yeah, guys, like I said, it's not about the horsepower. It's more about just stepping up with technology, right? We talk about this all the time with projectors. It's just stepping up to make sure that when I do sell it, I'm maximizing what I'm getting back. I probably end up just being a wash eventually with stepping up every time we're waiting and then buying something new because you're stepping up more than once. I don't know. But yeah, if it's $3,000, I
Left
could
and right, not just like an outlier, like left and right.
for all of the generation, all the versions, doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
and that's just like that's where they go, 3K. Even more than that for the top end cards.
Hold on. Let me see what version I have. Give me 1 second. I have the box.
Yeah, look at we got some people in the comments saying like, "What? I should sell mine." Brad, you should sell it. That is I would. I mean, why not? My 3080 has even gone up in value. Like, some of them are closing 450 is kind of like a low price. 500, 600 is kind of a higher price. The 3080 shouldn't be near that much. It's like 4 years old. But that's what it went because there's no cards available, so people pay for what they can get.
Yeah. So I don't have a amazing one. It's a Zotac.
I don't like Zotac.
I know, but when I bought this, like they were having problems being available when I got the 4090, and this was like the only like I just happened to walk into Micro Center and they had one.
Yeah.
So I just bought
I
it.
mean, the reality is that as long as you don't have problems with the card, any of those cards are going to be fine.
Oh yeah, and it's been
They're
phenomenal.
all such based off the NVIDIA standard, it doesn't matter.
It's
But the
been
problem is if you
fantastic.
have a problem, then you got to go to support.
Oh yeah.
And Zotac support's like
Yeah.
bad.
My 3080 was Asus Tough. Well, let's be frank here, Jonathan. All of their support sucks.
EVGA did not, and they died.
Okay, EVGA did not. I miss them. They will forever be missed, but they all suck now.
That's unfortunate. I guess it's a matter of not having to have dealt with the others. I've dealt with like Sapphire support. They were awesome on the AMD side. Zotac was like pulling teeth to get an RMA off a legitimately purchased card from their website. It wasn't even a third-party purchase. I bought it from Zotac.com.
Yeah.
And it had a problem, like a legitimate problem. Long story short, I asked for an RMA. They said, send us pictures of the sticker. I'd already given them the serial number and everything. Like, send a picture of the sticker. I sent them a picture of the sticker on the card that they asked for and nothing. So I write them back after a little while and like, you sent the wrong sticker. I was like, no, I sent you a picture of all the stickers. There's multiple pictures in there. And they're like, all right, send us another picture because we lost it. I sent them a picture of the sticker. They finally made an RMA. It just sat there forever and ever. Like, I sent the card in, nothing happened. I kept binging them over and over, like months. This was months, not just like I'm impatient. Sat in there for months. They lost my RMA. I had to fight like crazy to try to get them to find it again. And then like they finally got the RMA like shored back up. They discovered the card or whatever, checked it out. And then it took like weeks after that, even after they admitted they had it. It was like, I don't want to deal with this company again. And then like I did have to deal with them again because that was when I was doing crypto mining, and two of the cards I bought refurbished. I only had that one was in my gaming machine, but two of the cards that I bought out of 8, I bought 8 cards on the refurb site from Zotac, and 2 of the 8 were like failed. They like didn't even work. They had all kinds of problems, and so like I was just like, this company's. I'm not doing anything with them anymore. I've heard that so many times too with the Zotac refurb stuff that you'll get a card that has memory errors and issues that they kind of just farm back out and hope someone doesn't recognize.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enough about GPUs because I think we're losing our audience.
There's a lot of comments in here about people are gamers, apparently.
Yeah. You and I are huge nerds, just not in home theater.
So
not only in home theater.
Josh says Newegg Shuffle's back. Are you familiar with that? It's a Newegg lottery, effectively.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
It is back, and it's junk because they have overpriced cards in there bundled with overpriced things.
I remember that. God. So
bucket of parts type thing. And the prices on them are insane. Like you can buy a 5090 if you want to put a way overpriced OLED 32-inch monitor on it, and pay $3,500 for the pair. Or you can buy a $700 power supply with a 5090. They're just like, they take these secondary components and they jack up the entire bundle to like insane prices, and then they're shuffling it off. And good luck winning the shuffle. I entered a lot of those shuffles and never won any of them, or never got a chance to buy. If you want a 5080 or 5090 card, the way to do it right now is join the Discord server for NerdSpeak. Look that up, NerdSpeak. And they have like bots that go in and report when the sites come online. And if you're watching that in real time, you'll get the link. You won't be able to buy it in most cases, but you'll get the link and you'll click it and it'll be add to cart, and you'll click add to cart and it'll be gone because bots are buying these things. But at least you'll know when they're there. And the other one is Not Now in Stock is a good site. And if something has a lot of stock, like Asus, the website Asus has been having enough stock where they stay in stock for a couple minutes. But you're never going to catch it unless you have like one of those engines running that tell you when it's in.
I hate scalpers.
So the other thing that you can do is NVIDIA has if you've been an NVIDIA customer with a login since like January 1st of this year, it's not a very long threshold. They have a thing where they're going to basically put you in a queue and you can buy a Founders Edition card. So that's something else to consider if you have an NVIDIA account, which, I don't know how long it'll take to get one. But I signed up for that because I'd rather have a 5080 than a 5070 Ti or 5090 even. With how much? Because the 5090 this generation is a lot different than the 5080. Like the 4090 is faster than the 5080, but the 5090 is like a big jump over the 5080. Okay, I could talk about this probably more than I could talk about home theater.
We both could. We don't talk about it very often.
No.
So questions. There aren't very many of them. So if you guys have a question, because we haven't been on for very long, we've only been on for 50 minutes. So if you guys have a question, submit it to chat. We will get them in the order they come in. There's only 6 pinned right now, so there's not a ton. But if you guys have a question about anything AV or home theater related, or at this point gaming or PC hardware, anything related, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get them again in the order that they came in. All right. Carly Timble says, hey guys, what's up? Or hey, what's up guys? Either the difference on the back of an MK subwoofer that says variable in THX, which one to put it in?
I know about this one, Ryan, if you don't.
Go ahead. I don't.
So I bought some JAMO subwoofers that were THX certified. They were supposed to be a couple of them to be THX Ultra 2 certified, if I remember correctly. And at the time I had an Onkyo receiver. And you need to have, in order to put it in the THX mode on the subwoofer, you're also supposed to put it in the THX mode on the receiver. I don't think Denon even has a THX mode, and Marantz wouldn't either for that reason. I don't think Yamaha ever did. So if Onkyo doesn't have it, I'm not even sure how you're going to put it in a THX mode. But what it basically is a handshake to control gain so that your gain never gets to like input clipping or issues in that realm. So it's kind of like if both source and subwoofer have that mode, it's kind of a controlled communication between them so that you're optimally, in spec as far as gain. How much difference it makes? It probably none. We had it in THX mode, in fact, for our 2012 subwoofer shootout, and I ended up blowing up one of the Jamos at that event. So like it didn't save it. We were watching the Tron Legacy as one of the scenes, and it ended up frying an amp on that Yamo. I say Yamo, however you say it. So I don't know.
Does anybody actually know how to say that?
Probably over in Europe.
Oh, probably.
Subsidiary of Klipsch, actually. Klipsch owns them.
Schmock91, what is your favorite video game of all time? We did that one already. Good question, though. Ryan B, how would you add a L-T filter with Audyssey for sealed subs? Speaker power amps and HS24 subs. AV10, I'll watch later. Thanks.
L-T filter. HPF LP, high cut, low cut, LT. I mean, we have no shelf filters.
LT. But how would you add a filter to Audyssey for sealed subs? I think you'd have to use Audyssey Pro, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you can't do it with the built-in Audyssey. No matter what, you don't have that option.
Nope.
A low trim. I'm trying to think of what he would be trying to say here, because you wouldn't even really want a filter unless you wanted a shelf filter to raise the bottom end of the sealed subs.
I don't know what he means.
He's let's just assume he's talking about a shelf filter. In that case, you would either need Audyssey Pro to set like a target curve, and you could probably do it with the $20 app too instead of Audyssey X, because the $20 app will.
Oh, he's talking about a Linkwitz transform. Okay.
Oh, okay. We should have known that.
Sometimes we're not very smart.
Yeah, I mean that's basically just any of the shelf filters we're talking about. They have different ones, Butterworth, whatever else, but you can do it with a target curve. I don't have the Audyssey X software to know if it lets you choose the type of curve or the type of shelf. Do you know?
Mm-mm. But really, to add any type of filter, you're going to need Audyssey Pro or the app.
The app doesn't let you choose the curve. I know that because I have the app, the $20 app. But it does let you choose the target curve, so you can draw it in, on your phone with your finger and say, I want the bottom end raised. I don't know if it's a Linkwitz transform filter or not.
So $20 app is how.
Or mini DSP afterwards, after it goes on Audyssey.
I'm going to say that the mini DSP is probably the better way to do it instead of using the app, because you're going to have a lot more granular control using the mini DSP, and you can apply more than what you're going to be able to do with the app anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do more subs instead of just what the sub outs on the AV. Not that you need more than 4 on the AV10, because the AV10 is going to give you 4, but you do need more than 4.
Follow-up question to that one. I'm just going to pop it up since it's right here. Is Audyssey X still 1 license per AVR? As far as I know, it is. Yeah, but the $20 license isn't for the little app on your phone. That's $20 once and for all. Like, I didn't have to buy a new one when I got my AV10 after my 6700.
Yeah, but Audyssey X it's tied to the AVR, if I remember right.
I think that's right too. Although I wouldn't swear to it, but I think that's what
did that one. We only have 2 more questions. I haven't seen any more come in, so maybe it'll be a short. Well, there's another one. So there's 3 more questions. Palindrome guy. Hey guys, have either of you had Klipsch on your journey? What are your thoughts on the RP8002 for home cinema? As everything is going up so much, a Klipsch system is reasonably priced. I mean, most people, I think, have used Klipsch at some point in their journeys.
I had a few Klipsch.
I've had some Klipsch. I don't think a lot of them are bad. It just depends on what you're trying to do, what your price point is. I think the better thing would be to provide a budget, provide what your room looks like, the dimensions of the room, what your listening habits are, what you're trying to get out of the system, and find a speaker that best fixes the deficiencies that you're running into, instead of just saying, hey, I'm just going to get this speaker. You want to try and find what works best in your particular situation that overcomes any deficiencies that you may have in your environment. So I would start by, like on AVS, if you're on there, or even here in a follow-up, what is your room like? What are you using this speaker for volume-wise? What do you typically do listening-wise? Is it music, movies, combinations of both? What do you have now? Do you have subs? I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into this. How aesthetics, how important is that to this part of the equation? Is the wife approval factor, the partner approval factor going to be a thing? RP8000 may be fine, but there's definitely better speakers out there. Just need to know what you're trying to do, what you're trying to overcome in order to recommend what I think would be best.
I kind of think it's one of those things where there's a whole lot of people in this world that have bought those and been super happy.
Sure.
So like, if we naysay a little bit, and I'm about to naysay it a little bit, just take it with a grain of salt, because we're kind of more on the like far end of the enthusiast spectrum. So like my brother, for instance, he's got a whole Klipsch system and he doesn't have any intent to replace it, even after having heard mine. Like, he likes his system. Like, it's good enough for him. He doesn't want to spend the money or time to do more. So I use that as an example. But my thing with Klipsch is a lot of the consumer line stuff will have trouble reaching true reference, if that matters to you, because the compression driver they use isn't quite capable enough to go all the way up to reference.
But
you can hear it.
In defense of Klipsch, a lot of speakers are going to have difficulty doing that. It's not just Klipsch.
Absolutely.
But don't get Klipsch with the idea that, oh, it's got a compression driver, it's a horn, it's going to be able to do reference, because that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just how they're doing it.
Right. They're an inexpensive compression driver that they use in those. Compression drivers can have a lot of SPL, but the Klipsch ones traditionally don't necessarily. They have a different sound because they're a compression driver, and it's different. It's horn loaded and so forth, different than soft dome sound, but not necessarily truly reference capable in most cases. Yeah, and so again, take that with a grain of salt, because I just told you that like a lot of people are happy with it, including my brother. Like those are good speakers.
Can you grab the next one?
Yep, pinned. What was the last 5.1 system that impressed both of you? I'm not going to say that a 5.1 system can't impress us. Like we've talked about that before, that 5.1 is kind of like a great baseline if you're just getting started to have a lot of fun. And certainly many of those memories that we were talking about earlier in the show were based on a 5.1 system with a lot of great experiences. Anymore, you don't see very many 5.1 systems really in the enthusiast space, do we? I don't think we do.
Well, I'm going to say this, that I'd say any well-done system as 5.1 will impress me. As long as it's well done. I mean, the Fury version on Kaleidoscape for a long time was 5.1, and it was phenomenal. Fantastic. So it does not have to be a bajillion speakers in an environment to impress me. It can be 5 speakers. It could be 2 speakers. If it's well done and well integrated.
I kind of think it's gone away from 5.1 though, a lot of ways. Even like I'm thinking back through like the Kansas City guys, the only one I can even think of right now that has a 5.1 system, besides a gentleman that has it in the wall, like Chip 2s or whatever has one. But Inky, I think is his name on the forum. He has the JBL Pro Audio setup in his basement that's unfinished right now. All the other guys on AVS forum are more than 5.1, aren't they? Or at least in the Kansas City group, I think.
I don't know any of them that have 5.1.
So that's kind of why Paladin guy, we're not striking it down. We both agree you can have a great 5.1 system. It just seems like most people don't have that anymore. If you have good speakers and competent subs, I'm going to suggest 2 subwoofers instead of 1. But yeah, that can still be a really great setup. I feel like we're elitist if we don't even know people with 5.1 systems anymore. Very many people.
No, I just don't. Yeah, maybe. Any thoughts on the Carpo P3B line array speakers for home theater? I have never heard those. Randy, I'm sorry.
Carpo P3B. What are they? Carpo 3BP. My search didn't work. Carpo P3B. Oh, I did it wrong. P3B.
Those look like pro speakers. They're not very expensive. I'm going to say if you're looking for speakers like this, you should just get used JBL 70J1s.
I've bought some kind of speakers like this in the past and wasn't terribly impressed in my younger years. I don't know anything about this brand, honestly, so I'm not going to like say anything terrible, but because I don't know anything about this brand might indicate that it's not a well-known brand. Might. And maybe I'm just wrong, but I feel like I know Pro Audio speaker lines pretty well and so forth. So I don't usually recommend just going off the reservation and buying something because it looks like a good price. There's a lot of speakers that are name brand for a reason that are in that same ballpark of price, like $329. You can get yourself some Mackie speakers, for instance. Like look up the Mackie C200 or C320, I think it is. It's about the same price. They're almost surely gonna be a better speaker. Because EAW created the drivers and the crossover and everything, and they just have a heritage that's better than kind of a no-name company. You don't know what you're getting with that. And the reviews on Amazon and stuff don't indicate that that's some sort of like Rockstar speaker. So I don't know. Unless you're getting like, we might have found them as a deal on Facebook Marketplace or something super cheap. By all means, play with them to see what you think. But I'm with Ryan on his suggestion of just going to the used market and buying something from a mainstream company that's tried and true. And JBL is a good opportunity for that kind of thing. Mackie, QSC, different places, like different things like that. The kind of speakers that if you went into Musician's Friend or Guitar Center and saw what they sell, something like that, they sell what they sell for a reason, and go that route.
Troy C, what is your guys' take on the Onkyo RZ50 compared to the new Sony receivers?
We had this question like 3 or 4 times none of us have had any experience with Sony receivers.
They've reviewed well.
The last generation only, really,
yes,
has reviewed well.
And they've got a cool feature with dual center channels, which I'm actually getting ready to use on an install. The Sony AVRs have actually reviewed very, very well for what they are. The RZ,
not historically,
the newest generation,
In fact, historically they reviewed very poorly, but they've turned that around. And the Onkyo RZ50, by all accounts, is a good option.
Yeah, but it's had some power issues. I don't know if that was fixed. Maybe it was.
You're talking about the nanny mode type stuff in the surrounds.
Mm-hmm. But feature-wise, it's fantastic. Sheldon he had an RZ50 or an RZ70. He liked his a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're both good. Buy based on the features and the options you need, and you'll be good. You'll be happy. Don't sit here and say, oh, well, one brand or the other. I mean, they're all very similar. I think you could, if I'm going to pick one over any of them, it's going to be Denon and Marantz just because of the volume that they push out and the lineage that they have. But I think buy based on the price point and the features and options that you need for your particular implementation, and you'll be happy.
I'm catching up on comments a little bit. Do you see this thing from Ryan? I have 3 5.1 systems. We're saying we don't know anyone. We all know Ryan.
Well, I don't know Ryan. Who's Ryan?
But that's not his main system. Like the bathroom system.
3.5. Good Lord. System. He has a bathroom system? Ryan Wood.
Where are they going?
Ryan Wood.
I don't know. I'm just making that up.
If I set my system to play at 85 dB reference, how do I know it will hit 105?
You don't, unless you do compression sweep testing, or you just know you have a very capable speaker with enough power to get there.
You have to do compression sweeps. But compression sweeps are dangerous because you can damage a speaker or equipment. That's why you don't see them a lot of times.
It should be fine because you'll notice that it starts impairing its ability to go up in parity. We've talked about this before. I'll do it again in brief. If you're going to try to do this, get a like a sine it's like a sine sweep tool, and the OmniMic is the one I use. It does a full bandwidth frequency response sweep, so it starts at like 10 hertz and goes way up to 20,000 hertz, and you'll set your system to like 85 dB, for instance, and don't worry about the master volume as far as what it's at. It doesn't matter. You're going to use an external SPL meter or a mic, SPL mic, something like that to kind of measure. You're going to need to have, really, you're going to need REW, or you're going to need like OmniMic or something where you can get a full frequency spots plot. You're going to run it, and every time you run it, you'll increase on the AVR like 3 or 5 dB, probably 3 as you start getting towards the limits. And you need to make sure that frequency response line goes up exactly 3 across the entire frequency response plot. So where you'll start seeing compression is typically at the very high end, the 20,000 hertz end, or the very low end. Like if you're just doing speakers, maybe it'll be at 60 hertz or 80 hertz or whatever, where you start seeing compression. And what that means is like, hey, I'm asking on the main volume, I've turned my volume up 3 dB, and then I ran the plot again. And what I'm noticing is in the middle, say 1,000 hertz, yes, it went up 3 dB, but at 60 hertz, it didn't move at all. Like it stayed the same or even went down. Or at 20,000 hertz, it didn't go up 3 dB. It stayed the same or it went down. When you start seeing that frequency response not go up in parity, not go up in parallel to the line before it, then you know you're at your limits of your system, whether it be your amplifier or your speaker. And at some point, when you start going past that point where it starts going down, you'll encounter bad noises. At the bass end, you'll hear excursion, like mechanical noise, and at the high end, you can actually blow a driver pretty easily if you do too much power.
I mean, you may not notice the super high end at all, though. You're getting above most people's, adults at least, hearing ranges when you start getting into the high teens and
Sure,
low
certainly.
20s.
So on the right side, where you have the 20,000 hertz end, as that starts trailing off, the more you push, as that tweeter heats up, the more you push, the more that it will trail off. And as it trails off, it'll be moving to the left on the scale and going down into the frequency response plot, like towards 10,000 hertz. Probably if you're like us at like 40 years old type range, 45 years old, you probably hear to like 15,000 hertz or something. So the 20,000 hertz, the very end of it would be like if you're 18 years old or something. We don't, as you age, you lose that ability to hear. You can't do anything about it. It's just what happens. But as you start heating up that tweeter, or as you hit their limits, and that starts working its way down to like 10 or 12,000 hertz, you will hear that. Like you'll notice a difference there. So that's what you're doing is that compression test.
Good question. Well, I guess we should actually answer his question. Did we answer his question?
Said we can't answer it unless you do the testing yourself. Really, I mean,
yeah.
You're in a pretty safe place if you have very high efficiency speakers. Like say you got some JTR speakers or some Ascendo speakers that are like in the high 90 dB sensitivity, and say you have 100 or 150 watts per, 200 watts per. Yeah, you're gonna hit reference as long as everything's working properly.
Well, and as long as those specs are legitimate too. Mm-hmm. Specs can be very misleading. Mm-hmm. So if you have a quality speaker that is high sensitivity, high power handling, you're not going to have a problem.
Right.
But the majority of speakers
cannot
do it at your reference seating position. They can hit reference, but the sound when it gets to your reference seating position is not going to be at reference volume before they compress. Because remember, every doubling of distance, you lose 6 dB.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking very simplistic, not continuing room gain, any of that stuff. So you have to play significantly louder at the speaker for the sound by the time it reaches the reference seating position to be at reference volume. So just because you hear 105 dB peak does not mean that is all the speaker's doing. It may be doing 115 dB peak. I don't know. I'm just making something up. But that's where this can become a problem. So people will say, oh, yeah, my speakers can do reference. Well, you've got to take into consideration, this is why it's really important to ask, and I'll ask this all the time on AVS, how far are you sitting from the speaker? Mm-hmm. Because it's a very, very important part of that equation. And if you don't think about it, you're trying to hit reference, a lot of times you're in for a bad time. Because as Jonathan said, very few speakers can actually do this. And even less can do it and sound well. Really, really good.
And then it'll reveal itself. Once you are around systems that don't compress at reference and don't have that struggle, it'll reveal itself very clearly. Like I can go into almost anyone's house at this point and hear them. I'll say, turn it up to reference. And if they have it calibrated correctly, I will be able to tell just by ear, because I've been around this for enough time now. I will be able to tell by ear if it's doing compression or if it's not quite playing clear, because the vocals start sounding boxy, almost like it's like muffled a little bit. And high frequencies, kind of like we talked about, they kind of like fall off. Even if you don't hear like bad mechanical sounds, there's a difference in the presentation, and I'm pretty keen to it at this point. And I don't think, like if you asked me this 10 or 15 years ago, I don't think I would have been, because I hadn't heard anything better. So we've talked about this before. Like I had soft dome based towers until probably 2012 or something. Those soft dome based towers are doing exactly what we're talking about. They would compress at the 20 kilohertz end, like hard. And a soft dome tweeter cannot hit anywhere near reference by itself, a single soft dome tweeter. Didn't make any bad sounds. Like I'd play my receiver at reference all the time, or what I thought was reference. But my very first exposure to like pro audio in the home, turn the lights on, like, whoa, this is a whole new world I didn't even know existed. These tracks that I've played so many times sound dramatically different now. Like glass crashing sounds dramatically different. Chains crackling sound dramatically different. And that's because that tweeter was out of gas, and it was probably only playing, even though it was supposed to be called to 105, it was probably paying like 85 or even 80 dB in my seat. And there's a dramatic difference in 25 dB of output from a tweeter. Dramatic difference. And soft domes just can't do it. So yeah, in general, you have to have a lot of soft domes to do it. Let me rephrase that. A single soft dome can't do it.
The easiest way that I can put it is that compression is going to sound loud. Mm-hmm. Right? A lot of times we mistake distortion for loudness. And I have this all the time come into my room for customers that are doing demos. They're like, oh yeah, I listen to my system at this volume. And the missus or their partner will always say, yeah, but it's too loud. And then I play the game of, okay, well, we'll play this same game, but I want you to tell me when I'm too loud. And I just start turning it up. And they never get to that point because they're not encountering distortion.
You're not encountering distortion, harmonics, all that stuff.
So a lot of times when people say, oh, it's way too loud, it's distortion. If you go to a rock concert or you're at a stadium or something, you can encounter huge amounts of volume before, and you may hurt the next day or later, but it is way louder than what most people are listening to in their theaters or at home. And you're not encountering that distortion a lot of times. So distortion, a lot of times, to reiterate, is mistaken for volume. But it's still not good for you. Don't mistake this. But you can get a lot louder if you don't have the distortion because you're not going to perceive it that way.
True.
Great question, though. What determines a speaker to hit reference? Kind of goes on to this. There's a lot of things that go into this equation, but the easiest thing that you can look at, if we're looking at specs that are true to form, is you need a high sensitive speaker and a lot of power handling. You can weight that one way or the other. Like if I have a lower sensitive speaker that can handle just crap tons of power, or if I have a super sensitive speaker, I can get away with less power, right? So like the Black Swans, the tweeter, 117 dB sensitive, I can do with a lot less power. Now, the woofer needs more power. It's not as sensitive, so you need more power there. But if you had like a 83 dB sensitive speaker, you're going to need way more power because I have to step up. So every doubling of power is an increase of 3 dB. So you see as you start lower, you got a lot further to go before you get to a peak of 105, as an example, right? Every studio is going to have a different reference point. This is just what we've taken from THX. But you can kind of skew this one way or the other, depending on sensitivity and depending on power handling. But driver type, as Jonathan said, soft dome tweeters are virtually never going to be able to do it unless you have something like his speakers back there, because those are soft domes. There's just a bunch of them.
There's 16 of them, so they're dividing the load out.
So you get around that by using multiples, compression drivers, planar magnetics, line source. I mean, there's different ways that you can get around this stuff, and different types of speakers are going to handle the sound fall off differently over distance because of how the sound wave propagates. There's a lot of science when you start getting into this, a lot of which I am not smart enough to understand or really comprehend as we get into that. But the easiest thing to break it down very, very simply is if you look at a speaker and the specs are true to form, to get something that's going to be able to do it with ease. What's your sensitivity on yours, Jonathan? Yours is quite high.
That's actually not that high. I think it's 92.5.
That's pretty high historically.
But it's a true 92.5.
Yeah.
It's not like a overrated 22.5.
So, but they have pretty high power handling.
Yes, 2,000 watts.
Yeah. So high sensitivity, high power handling, true to form spec, you're going to be fine. You'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the world, 92 is kind of like the threshold. 92 dB is kind of like where most receivers, if the speaker is truly capable of it, 92 dB sensitive will usually get you to reference in most medium-sized rooms. Below that, you need more power than your traditional setups, and above that, you need higher sensitivity. So, yeah, it's there are some just general thresholds, like kind of best practices recommendations. Like traditionally, an 8-inch woofer is needed to get to reference in most size home theater rooms. There's a lot of 6, even high sensitivity, they'll kind of struggle because displacement plays into this. You can get, there's different tweeter sizes, different compression driver size, different, all that kind of stuff. So like a traditional soft dome is a 1-inch soft dome, but some of the pro audio stuff that uses soft domes might have like a 1.5-inch soft dome, and they might cover a higher frequency range where like a mid would come in and cover some of the stuff where the tweeters start.
And they may be made of different materials that are going to be able to handle the power handling or the
thermal handling
thresholds differently.
They can handle all that.
The other thing that I've got to go back and reiterate, because I see a bunch of things. Can this speaker hit reference? And this speaker, you've the other part that has to come into this is the room, and you've got to take distance into consideration. right? Jonathan speakers traditionally are designed to throw sound way over there, right? They have huge amounts of power handling. How the line array is built, it allows the sound to travel further without falling off as quickly. So it has properties that allow it to overcome certain situations. Distance is a huge part of this equation, and you cannot forget about it. So when I say you've got to just look at sensitivity and power handling, you've also got to look at distance. Because if I'm saying, oh, I have a low sensitivity speaker and it's not very power efficient with not power efficient, but it can't handle very much power. If I'm sitting 5 feet from it, I'm probably going to still be relatively okay. I may be close, but that's very different than sitting 12 feet or 15 feet from it because of how the sound falls off and propagates. So that has to be considered. And then also the last thing that I'll talk about is you also have to consider how long that sound is going to be sustained, because peak is very different than a sustain, right? If I'm having to sustain 105 dB over just momentarily hitting it over peak, that's very different. Those are two totally different things.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have heat build up way, way faster over that point of a sustain note than just peak. Peak is a lot easier than sustain. So it also depends on the content, but that's why 105 dB peak. I keep saying last thing, but another thing to consider, EQ. We haven't talked about EQ because
Right.
EQ plays into this, right? You may have 105 dB, but let's say you've got a null sitting at, I don't know, 400 hertz, and you've boosted that. Well, now you've got a boost. I'm just going to make something up. It's 5 dB. So now at 400 hertz, 5 dB, you're at 109 or 110 instead of 105, right? And then you've also got to consider, since we're talking about SPL, when you start bringing your crossover in, your crossover isn't just this and this as it hits your crossover point, it's this. So you're going to have a slope, and as it comes up. So 100 or 85 or 105 at, say, 120, right? Your speaker is actually going to be, instead of flat as you get out here, or even like as your Harman curve comes down, because a lot of curves come down as they come to higher frequencies because of how we hear. Our higher registers, we need less energy to equate them to lower frequencies. So when you get into your crossover point, if you're thinking about it flat, but you've added a crossover, if 400 or 500 hertz is, let's say, 105, and your crossover is set at 80 or 90, well, your crossover, since it's applying a slope, boop, your male vocal may now be, instead of 105, it may be like 110, or I'm not saying the vocal, but anything in that frequency range, or 115, or any of that stuff for peak. So these are things that a lot of people don't consider, that you have to consider when you're looking at what a speaker is capable of and what you're trying to do with reference. So I know I started with this is there's only a couple things, and now we're well past. It's only a couple things. Anyway, good question. Reference is a big topic. Matt Post talks about it significantly. It's an interesting part of the industry. This is an interesting question. Movie Q says, what is your favorite game for audio?
I can tell you some memorable things for audio.
I mean, yeah, let's just do that.
So this came to mind earlier when we were talking about home theater gaming. I set up directional bass in here one time just to like test it, and the result of the experiment was kind of like a failure. Like it wasn't worth keeping. But what it was is 2 18s in each of the four corners of the room. And one of the things where it did work was in Diablo 3. There was a particular, or was it? I think it was Diablo 4 actually, right? The newest one's Diablo 4. Is that right?
Are you saying what is the newest Diablo game? That's 4.
Okay, so one of the auras on that was like a power-up effect was like a ring that went around the character. I can't remember the name of the effect at this point, but it was a real low frequency sound, and it swirled around the character. And the directional bass at that point like was very obviously moving around the room to the different subwoofers because it was being routed through the AV10 and the directional bass path. So like I showed that to several people. It's really a cool effect. Unfortunately, a very minority of the content that I tested was even distinguishable, but that one was. So that was fun. Battlefront games with like Star Wars Battlefront are fantastic in the sound department. Like truly fantastic. Fantastic grenades, fantastic explosions, starship fighters flying overhead, all the pew pew sounds going from all zigzagging all the room. Really fun. Halo's fantastic.
Just the song.
Gears of War, fantastic.
Mine though is Dead Space. That Dead Space and Alien Isolation.
You like the scary ones.
I don't know. The sound just plays more into that emotional involvement for me in those games. And when you're playing something that is dependent on sound cues, I feel like it boosts that immersion level. Stitch also brings up Forza. Car games are fantastic for that stuff.
Fun one. Need for Speed Underground.
Yeah,
comes to mind. That had a lot of like.
Oh man, I still think about those tracks. And oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean when the game loaded up, it had the subs work.
Yeah.
I played one recently in the last year called Bramble. Have you played that one by chance? Mm-hmm. It's kind of a little platformer style game, and the final boss in the game is in the Hall of Mountain King is played like in a major thematic way. It's very memorable because it sounded so good in the home theater. Bramble, if you haven't played that one, look that up, guys. It's probably a 5 or 6 hour game. It's not that long. It's really worth your time.
Yeah. Good question. John Hundle asks, what is the difference between nits, foot lamberts, and lumens? They seem to be thrown around interchangeably, and it's got me confused. So these are different ways of measuring light from a reflected or emitted source or from the lens of a projector. So it's just different ways of measuring light. My recommendation is to look up the definitions. I could say what they are, but I think it's easier if you just ask ChatGPT or Google it. You've got foot lamberts, which are, I guess I can kind of tell you, are from a reflected surface. Nits are typically from an emitted surface, and lumens are coming from something like a projector. It's just different ways of measuring light. You could use them all to measure a projector or a TV, but you typically use lumens to measure like a light output, nits to measure light coming from a TV, and foot lamberts to measure light coming off of a reflected screen is typically what people will do. But people do have a tendency to use them interchangeably, I think sometimes because they don't know what they are, but they all are very different, and they use different formulas and equations to get the result. But Google's your friend on this one. Nits and foot lamberts are the common ones for TVs, projectors, and lumens. What are you doing?
I thought the comments were kind of fun over there on the side I was reading. Where the people are saying what games had good sound. And this doesn't show very many as far as it. I'll read off a few of them. Call of Duty Surround could get scary. That Call of Duty had great sound, actually. All the Call of Duties.
Battlefield had great sound.
Dead Space. Another person said Dead Space. Underground 2 was peak. Last of Us 1 and 2. Tomb Raider. Yep. Tomb Raider did have good sound. The new, like maybe the one that came out 5 years ago, kind of the remake of Lara Croft, the grittier version, that had good sound.
I haven't played that one. Troy C, have you guys heard the new SVS, SB, and PB17? No.
No, but we looked up that and we thought that the differences in the 16 and 17 weren't that big, weren't they? Isn't that kind of what we concluded?
I mean, from a spec and measurement wise, yes, but I'd have to hear it in order to pass judgment necessarily.
I don't have a problem with SVS. They've been around a long time. They make good quality stuff.
Paul Travisano asks, do you think there's a significant difference in a cheap DAC versus an expensive one? Jonathan does.
So,
well-made DAC is a well-made DAC.
Talking right? Because I think this boils down to some of that stuff we've talked about, that our ears, you can go really cheap and probably hear a difference.
Sure.
But if you get a competent DAC that's got a SYNAD score of above,
say the DAC that's in a Denon 3800 versus my Audio X Saber Pro.
Never hear the difference. Unfortunately, I hate to tell that to people who You just couldn't. I mean, I'd like to see a blind test where somebody can, because so far I have not been able to see that. Where they're level matched and whatnot.
Yep. We've tested this. We couldn't do it. Ryan B asks another question. I like how he said he was going to watch later when we asked that first question, and he keeps asking questions. I like the questions. Are the high dB levels of your subs causing hearing damage? Yeah.
They can. Well, I try not to. Like, we try not to. You can tell if your ears feel muffled or if they're ringing or if you get a little bit of tinnitus that comes and goes. Like, you can tell you're doing damage. I try to stay away from that edge.
It takes significantly more energy at lower frequencies than it does at higher frequencies to cause damage, from my understanding.
Yeah. Do you have tinnitus at all?
I've had it my entire life.
Mine developed from the subwoofer hobby, so I probably can say that mine actually did damage.
Mine is
high school audio subwoofers is when I first got it.
Mine is from
later too.
Probably blows to the head as a goalkeeper. I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be honest.
Mine's light. Mine's not very strong tinnitus, but I have it.
I don't know what's considered light or heavy. I can hear. I don't pay attention to it most of the time, but if I do start paying attention to it, I can hear it. There is always a ringing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny. You don't know what's heavy or light or how bad you actually have it because you can't hear somebody else's tinnitus.
Correct, but just generally speaking, like, I'm the same boat as you. Like, it doesn't bother me day in and day out. Like, if I know it's there, if I listen for it. If it's super quiet somewhere, I'll hear it. But it's not something that's like I can sleep fine. It doesn't bother me in that way. I can tell from my personal experience that in the 140 dB range, that's when I start getting uncomfortable, and so I've crafted my system to not do that. I've been in multiple rooms with 140 plus, and I don't like it, and it makes my ears sore, and my tinnitus gets activated more. And if I'm in it for very long, I start getting like a muffled sensation, like I've been underwater, like water in my ear type thing. So to me, clearly, if I'm damaging it otherwise, I don't know it, but clearly something's going on that's not healthy, because for my personal ears, like, that's where I start getting uncomfortable. Have you got to that point yet where you know, like, a threshold where you feel uncomfortable?
No.
Keep in mind when you go to, like, people's houses that have these high capable systems, and kind of, if you have an SPL meter or your laptop, that's kind of how I got there, is from the different subwoofer shootouts, measuring it and kind of seeing where I started feeling uncomfortable. It's in the low 140 dB range for me.
Oh yeah, that's probably where mine is. As long as I'm below that, I'm sure, especially at higher frequencies, I'm doing damage, but I'm not. It's long-term damage. I'm not making
not immediately noticeable.
No.
Yeah, same here. I stay away from the immediate and noticeable stuff.
It's not healthy though, but I choose to do. I eat cheeseburgers. I don't know. I'm gonna die eventually. Randy McMinn says, "What AV rack?" Oh no,
that was in the same comment. Sorry. He says,
"This is an interesting comment."
The liquid in your ears and let the high frequency in. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not.
Randy McMinn says, "What AV rack would you recommend?" Do you have one you recommend? I can tell you what I would do for most
I bought a Cooper Industries one that works fine for me. I don't have a whole lot of experience with there.
Here's what I would do. If you're looking for a deal, Facebook Marketplace, and look for a business or anybody that's just selling them cheap, because most racks, good racks, have adjustable rails, and you can adjust the width to whatever you need. And typically it's an industry standard, regardless if it's AV equipment or networking gear. And you can get, a lot of times, really good deals for people that are selling decommissioned data center racks.
Oh, yeah.
Really good. Like, sometimes giving them away, because what are most people going to do with a data center rack? Nothing. So that's where you can start. Now, a lot of times those racks are going to come with nothing. They may be missing doors. They're going to be missing hardware. So good racks, home theater dedicated racks that come with a bunch of shelves and hardware and cooling fans. MW makes good ones. Who else? There's a Middle Atlantic makes good ones. You're going to be looking at somewhere ballpark of $1,000 to $2,000 typically for a full rack. like 42 to 48U. But if you're looking for a deal, use data center racks.
I think your Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist recommendation is spot on because you
Yep.
can get them all day long for $200 on there, and
Yep.
they're not. You may be missing accessories, but they're not typically damaged. I mean, probably hit them with a truck before they'd be damaged.
Yeah, you could. You absolutely could. And they're a pain in the ass to move. So most people they're not going to try and sell them on eBay because it's going to be tons of shipping. So they just sell them on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of times they have to give them away and look for a deal. Finster, I understand side surround speakers can be placed about a foot above ear level. Is that measured from the center of the tweeter horn, the center of the lowest driver, or something else? Tweeter's your most directional. As you get up into higher frequencies, this way, I think. I don't know. Your sound becomes more directional. It also depends on the waveguide, but traditionally, as you're moving up in the frequency response, the higher frequency it is, the more directional the sound's going to be. So you want the tweeter, most ideally, to be as close to ear level or aimed at your ear. Where do you like them? You're obviously above ear level.
Generally speaking, if you have a traditional speaker, the tweeter is what you play to, not the woofers or not the bass drivers. And a foot. I mean, if you're a purist, it's going to be at ear level, but that doesn't work with multiple seats and so forth. So you raise it to make sure it gets coverage of the other seats.
Not for me. It's a compromise, right? And there's nothing wrong with a compromise. You compromise to make sure that everybody on the couch has an equal experience, right? Because their head and stuff isn't blocking the sound field or the couch backs or what have you. I'm just a narcissist and I don't care. My seat doesn't matter. You will lay down before you implicate anything. So we actually had the speakers considerably higher, but the problem that I had there is you start encroaching on the tops and you lose, at least in the experience center, you lose the separation as much. The other problem I had is all of the sound field was up here. It wasn't down here. So when we dropped the speakers, it just made it so I was more in a bubble than everything being a dome, if you will. That was my perspective, but
excellent to experiment.
Yeah. A little bit harder in some situations to move a speaker up and down, but a lot of people put them up so that they, like in a commercial cinema, they're up higher because they don't want other people's bodies and things blocking the sound from getting to your ears. As low as you can go, as close to your ear level as you can possibly get is ideal. Miguel Munoz. I probably mispronounced that. I do deeply apologize for that, but Munoz, I think. How many sealed 24s will I need to equate to 2 ported 24s?
Around port tune, you generally have 6 to 10 dB of increased gain, and that usually is for 20 hertz, maybe 30 hertz, maybe even as much as 40 hertz that you have that gain, diminishing at port tune as the highest amount. To get 6 dB more would require a lot more subs. If you stack them, you get a doubling of dB for every doubling of subs and amps. So from 1 to 2, you would get is it am I remembering this right? 6 dB.
6 for
and not
from doubling. You get a 6 for doubling the driver and a 6 for doubling the power. Or sorry, 3 and 3.
If they're co-located, if they're stacked or immediately adjacent, and if they're if they're like separated, it's 3 dB for doubling amp and subs. So if you get 6 to 10 dB, then you would need to quadruple, right?
Well, if you're going for 10,
if you're not stacking them, you would need to quadruple them, and if you're stacking them, you would need to double them. And that would get you 6. It wouldn't get you 10. Because like let's say you had 2 ported and 2 sealed. If you added 2 more ported, that's doubling, and stacking them gets you 6, but doesn't get you 10.
Yeah. If you're not co-locating, you need quadruple.
If you're not co-locating, you'd need as many as maybe not quite 8, but close to 8 24s to get that at the port tune, and it diminishes quickly after the port tune. if you're at the higher frequencies, you don't need 8 to equal 2. It'd be like, say you're talking about 80 hertz, it would be 2 to 2. Like there's not really going to be any significant difference in output at 80 hertz. It's at the port tune, say 20 hertz or 15 hertz or whatever your port tune is, that huge amount happens. We should probably show a frequency response so that we can make this practical.
Database. I mean, you could probably do it just by showing an RS1 against a 2400.
Yeah. Yeah, let's try that. That'd be a good comparison. I'll try to pull this up. Systems. Okay, let's see. JTR. Here is the 2400 versus the S2. Is the 2400? Yeah, let's do that one. He doesn't have the 4000 on database, does he?
Well, the 4000 wouldn't be, you'd need to do an RS2 versus a 4000.
We need an RS1 versus a 2400 because the S2 has two 18s in it. So that's not going to be they do have a 4000 here. Okay, I got it here. So here's a 4000. I'm going to share my screen. We got it. Sorry for the delay, but this will be so much easier to explain with a visual aid. So let's do entire screen and then share. If you can't, is the colors all blown out?
Mm-hmm.
1 second. Let me turn off HDR. This is a routine thing we have to do. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go down here to the graph, frequency response glass, and we're going to add instead, we're looking at a 4000, so we're going to add a JTR S2 right here, and we'll say add. So we'll come down to the frequency response graph. So, yeah, okay, the 4000 in this particular case has quite a bit more output. That's maximum long term. Let's
zoom in.
Let's look for, I want to find the native response if we can. That's max outburst burst, max burst. This isn't really showing what I was trying to show, because if we could find the native frequency response, that might help us. See, this is probably not going to be the best way to show this on this particular stuff, because JTR does all kind of DSP, so his S2 doesn't look like a normal. It doesn't look like a normal sealed sub. Like he's got it boosted up real high at 20 hertz. It's not rolling off from like 30 down.
Could you do a Devastator against a UM18?
Devastator's a horn, right? That might get a little tricky. Let's do like
or a Marty.
They're not the same, but let's do like a stereo integrity, because that would just be like there would be no EQ applied here. So this one would be fine. And then let's add, this should be a sealed driver setup. Let's make sure he's got some frequency response plots in here. How about systems? Maybe I was in the wrong place. Stereo integrity. Do it yourself, maybe. Stereo integrity. Here we go. Sealed. This will be it. And then we need to find a ported. So let's do like a, what do we want to do for a ported here? This is going to be more what we're trying to explain. So this is more like a sealed response without having that fancy DSP that Jeff put in there. Let's do a JTR Captivator 1800 or something. 1400.
Then you're going to have the DSP on that.
Yeah, but it's a ported sub, so his DSP is not going to be doing as much here. So okay, let's step up. Let's step that up away from that JTR. Let's go to a higher JTR.
Just do a Marty.
Do they have Martys in here?
I would think so, don't they?
I don't know. Let's try this one. See what that does. This is probably okay. So this is a JTR. This will get the idea across. This is a JTR 2400. It's a ported subwoofer. It's got an 18-inch driver in it. you can disregard this high output here because he's got this thing on a K2 amp that's like putting out some stupid amount of power. Absolutely absurd. Just let's pay attention to the part below the frequency response plot, and let's imagine that these two drivers were identical and they had the same output up top, or generally the same output up top. You can see that the black line here is is basically his DSP mode, and you can see how much it elevates. Port tune on that thing is like 10 or 12 hertz or something. You can see how much he's gained down here. And if you'd imagine these are the same drivers, up here would be the same. So this is the part, like port tune on this is 10 hertz to 20 hertz. In that 10 to 25 hertz range, he's getting this distance here between, I got it too big. He's getting the distance here between the black line that's highlighted right now and the blue line here that's sealed. So if that's 6 to 10 dB, like I told you, that's traditionally between sealed and if you put the same exact driver in a ported sub and same exact driver in a sealed sub, you usually have 6 to 10 dB more depending on the driver that's used. That's the thing I'm talking about. And then once you get to where the port tune is no longer in effect, then they're basically more or less the same at that point if it's the same driver. So when we're saying you have to get all those extra ported subs to mount to equal the sealed, we're talking about basically from port tune on up to about 30 to 40 hertz in general. The lower the port tune, the less that 30 to 40 hertz will be. In this case, it's like 25 hertz that you get that advantage. It's not across the whole board. All right, not as clear of an illustration as I hoped for because we didn't have a matching driver. What you'd want is the same driver in the sealed versus the ported box. But I hope you got the point there. We'll have to be a little more practiced on that next time we show it, so it's not so
practiced. We don't practice. Fly by the seat of our pants.
Mm-hmm.
We've reached the end.
Oops, sorry, I asked what that site is. That's called Database, and it's defunct. Unfortunately, they're not doing it anymore, but it's such a good site. Data-BASS.
Solid site. What should our movie be next week?
Do you want to watch that secret level stuff?
Yes.
Are you talking about that? I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either.
I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'd like to try it.
I want to watch Armored Core, and I want to watch Warhammer 40K. It's just...
Oh, that looks good, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I'm excited. Even if it sucks, it'll still be cool. I mean,
Go ahead.
How could Keanu Reeves and Armored Core be terrible?
You probably can't.
They can't be. It's not possible. It'll probably be terrible. I hope not. We'll do that. Secret level. What should the topic be next week?
Chat, give us a topic.
Come on. Topic. I'm trying to think if I've got anything. I don't think there's anything new coming. Chat will give us something. I don't know what the topic will be. It'll be something. We'll be here sometime next week. Okay. Secret level, some topic next week. What a stream that'll be.
We back to Friday night next week?
Maybe.
We don't know yet.
Probably. I don't know. Yes, maybe no. I have no idea. Okay. Well, 2 hours, 10 minutes under. Not too bad. I'm going to watch Secret Level now.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
Let me know what you think. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe out there. Give us some topics. Drop them in chat. Drop them in the comments. And we'll see you guys next week. Friday, Saturday, or maybe Sunday. But have a good one, guys. See you later.